We can't.
Cool. Hey everybody, meteorologist Mike Slifer here. We just got a tornado warning in for Monroe County. We've been tracking this cell as it worked its way through Giles County, Virginia. I've got a loop at the radar right here. This is the tornado warned cell. So we're tracking it right now. It's on pace to move toward the Union area. We'll be watching this closely. That tornado warning is issued by the National Weather Service at Blacksburg, and that will be in effect for the next half hour or so. We'll be watching that. It goes till 1:45 this afternoon. I'm going to switch on over to the wind so that we can talk a little bit about what's going on here. Stick with us. We are going to explain how this situation is working itself out. So first and foremost, let's zoom in a little bit closer here so that we can get a better idea of what this cell is doing. You'll notice it's tracking just past Parisburg right now, Virginia, moving towards Waiteville. And again, Union is in the path of this tornado warning. Peterstown also in the path of this tornado warning, and that is going to keep moving into Monroe County. You can see very clearly here where this tight rotation is. I'm actually going to stop the lap so that we can circle it and talk a bit about what's going on. This right here is the tornado warned part of the storm. So this is all moving in to Monroe County and will continue to do so until about 1:45 p.m. So again, it's within the next half hour or so. We are talking to the National Weather Service to figure out the latest with this. It's currently moving northeast at 40 miles an hour, and we can track the latest with this cell. I'm going to clear out the velocity and switch back over to our reflectivity here. So base velocity is the wind of the storm that we're actually looking at. And what you see here on the radar, if we grab our storm track here, and it's moving to the northeast about 40 miles an hour. So we're going to put that to, it goes almost through most of Monroe County. And again, the cities included in this would be Union. It's right on the cusp of Peterstown, Waiteville, Virginia, and this is going to be underneath that tornado warning until 1:45. The wind speed currently associated with this looks like there's a nice tight velocity couplet, and that right there is exactly what we look for when it comes to these tornado warnings. The storm is moving northeast at about 40 miles an hour, expecting it to fall apart a little bit as it starts to run into some of the terrain. But for now, this is still a tornado warned system. Seek shelter immediately. That's what you have to do when these tornado warnings come in. If you are in Monroe County, even if you don't think you're under the warning itself, it's important that you seek shelter and take this seriously. We'll switch it back over to our storm wind here so that you can see the tight rotation underneath that velocity couplet. Again, very impressive to see a signature like this, especially in our region. So this right here would be the part of the storm that is producing or could potentially produce a tornado. This is currently radar indicated, so we haven't had any sightings of that tornado, but it is moving into Monroe County as we speak, towards the city of Union, up US 219 and through Giles County, Virginia. So stick with us. We will continue to give you more updates on this. Let's switch back over to our reflectivity here, and we're going to loop the radar so that you can see the motion of the storm. For anybody who may just be tuning in here, we've been keeping an eye on this cell right here. We watched it start to fire up through Giles County, Virginia. You'll notice that as it moves closer to us, and especially into the circled area, starting to fall apart a little bit. This hook that we see in some of the former frames on the radar is a good indication that this storm does have some rotation with it, and again, could potentially be producing a tornado. We've been watching this cell as it worked its way through Virginia. The circled area right now is where we could potentially see a tornado. And again, this tornado warning is for Monroe County. That hasn't quite made it into Monroe County just yet, but it is working its way there. If this storm continues to fall apart and loses its maturity, if it continues to break down as it works its way into the terrain and into Monroe County, that is where we could run into some issues. And again, for now, we still have the tornado warning. If it falls apart and weakens, that's good. If not, we will be watching that. I'm going to hop back off screen here and go switch back over to our other radar product. We've been watching that closely, and we just need to keep an eye on this as it works its way through. So I'm going to go back over to our wind because I think that tells the story a little bit better on what's going on here. Tornado warning for Monroe County for anybody who's just tuning in. Seek shelter immediately. That's in effect until 1:45 p.m. Here's the rotation associated with that system. I've circled it here on the radar, and you can see very clearly where the red and the greens are touching. That is where we see the best chance for a tornado. This is radar indicated, so we haven't heard pictures. We haven't seen pictures, rather, of a tornado, and we haven't really heard of a report of the tornado just yet. So if this storm is producing a tornado, it is going to be right here moving toward Waiteville and again up toward Union. This entire area in the red box that you see right here is underneath that warning. It stretches almost to Ronceverte, up US 219, Union and Linside in Monroe counties included. Stick with Storm Tracker 59. We've got more. I'm going to switch the radar product out again. Just want to remind everybody that if you are underneath this warning, the best thing you can do is get inside. Stay indoors. Find an interior room, something without windows if you don't have a basement, a bathroom, a closet, anything like that is better than, of course, one, being outside, and two, it's better than anything with windows. If you don't have windows, that is the best place to be, a room that does not have windows. I'm going to zoom in even a little bit closer here so that we can really get down into some of the details here. Here is where we have our rotation. It's currently near Kyer, Virginia, moving up toward Waiteville, and it is going to keep tracking off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour. The cell that was producing this, again, not quite as impressive as when it first started to form. We've been watching this closely since it started up, and I do think that it's possible that with such a tight rotation like that, the storm could be dropping a tornado. I haven't heard any word from the National Weather Service yet as to whether or not we've gotten reports of a sighted tornado in the region, but it is moving into Monroe County as we speak. It's moving off to the northeast at 40 miles an hour. The reflectivity on the radar, not as impressive as it was. We were looking at a pretty zoomed in version of it. I've zoomed back out now, and the storm is starting to lose its structure. What you look for on some of these systems is what we call the hook echo. So we actually see the main part of the cell, and then off towards the bottom is where we see the chance for some of that rotation, and that's where we could potentially be seeing that. But it's starting to lose its structure a little bit. It's moving into Monroe County as we speak, and if it continues to break down like that, then that means that the warning will get expired early. But right now, it is in effect until 1:45 p.m. We've been watching this cell as it's been tracking on through. Again, every scan of the radar is more data, so we will just continue to track it as it passes. We'll switch back over to our storm wind. Still seeing that rotation here, and this is about to move over the border from Virginia, Giles County, Virginia, into Monroe County, West Virginia. I'm going to circle this so that you can see exactly what we are looking for here. Wind speed estimates, not that great because we're a bit further from the radar site. Some of the winds associated with this are likely in the 60-mile-an-hour range. Could be some gusts out ahead of this rotation itself, but this is what we are tracking as it moves from Giles County, Virginia, into Monroe County, West Virginia. If you are underneath this tornado warning, make sure you seek shelter immediately. Best place to go: an interior room like a bathroom or a closet, something that does not have windows. I know that some of us don't have basements. If you don't have a basement, pick an interior room and seek shelter now, especially if you are underneath this warning. It's moving off to the northeast at about 40 miles an hour. That's going to push it into the US 219 corridor within the next 15 to 20 minutes. This warning is expected to go until 1:45. We'll be watching each scan of the radar to see if it holds together. Sometimes what happens when these storms run into the terrain and into the mountains is they fall apart a little bit. A weakening signature, of course, would be a great thing, but for now we are just going to watch this as it starts to pass from Virginia into West Virginia. We've been tracking this storm through Giles County. I am going to switch our product back out here just so we can get a better idea of what's going on, zoom out a little bit and loop it. I think that that's the best way to tell the story of the storm. So where it's circled is where we see the rotation right now, and we can really see just how impressive that storm was as it was in Giles County, Virginia. Again, starting to lose that structure a little bit, but we will stay with you until we know for sure that things are not as impressive as they may have looked. I mean, this was a pretty nasty cell that popped up, and what ended up happening is we actually had some inflow out of the southeast, and the storm system itself was moving off to the north and east. So the rotation of that wind is what allowed something like this to fire up. The National Weather Service has this warned until 1:45 this afternoon. we will just stick with you until this warning does expire or until the storm falls apart. So here's the circled area. That's where we see the rotation right now moving over the border from Virginia into West Virginia, Giles County, Virginia, into Monroe County, West Virginia. It's moving off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour. I think that we will likely see a new warning get issued if it still has that rotation. It's moving pretty quickly, so we'll just track it as it starts to move into our region. If you're underneath this warning here, make sure you seek shelter immediately. I'm going to stop this lapse and zoom back in. We'll switch back over to our storm winds. So we're right outside Waiteville now in West Virginia, and that's where we're starting to see more of that rotation. It's this signature right here that we are watching. This is where we see the chance for this cell to be dropping a tornado. Again, this has not been sighted. This is a radar indicated storm, and that means that we will just track it as it starts to pass on through our region. We do have a pretty good setup today for some of those stronger storms, a lot of twisting with the wind. That's why we are able to get, storms like this, even though we didn't have quite as much energy to use because of all the rain that we saw earlier this morning. We've still got just enough twist with that wind to be able to get some of these stronger storms to fire up. We can pixel query some of this. It's a little bit further from the radar, so the radar is likely going to be underdoing some of this wind. But when you see 45 to 50 mile an hour winds, and right next to it you see that signature for, this is coming up as 12 mile an hour, but I think it's a little bit more than that. What we call that is gate to gate shear, and that is where we see a very tight rotation. So if the storm is producing a tornado, that is where it is, currently on the ground now in West Virginia. We're watching closely, still haven't heard any reports from the National Weather Service to see if there is a tornado on the ground, but we've been watching this pretty closely. I do think that now that we're starting to get into the terrain a little bit and the storm is losing some of its structure, it's possible that things will weaken. But this tornado warning is in effect until 1:45 p.m. For anyone who's just tuning in, a tornado warning in Monroe County, West Virginia until 1:45. If you are underneath this warning, if you are in the path of this storm, now is the time to seek shelter. Indoor rooms, closets, bathrooms, something without windows, best place to be. Otherwise, a basement. That's also another great option, but if you don't have a basement, try to find an inner room. So seek shelter if you're underneath this warning. And again, as we get more information in, each scan of the radar helps us know where exactly this storm is and know exactly what's going on. So we're just going to track this until things either fall apart or it moves away from us. I do think that with some of these scans that have been coming in with the radar, it's not looking quite as impressive as it was. We are starting to lose some of that structure. We're starting to lose some of that hook, but now we're starting to see some of that heavier rain work its way into Union. Take a look right up to 19. So from Lilydale all the way up into Union and soon up into Pickaway and Sinks Grove is where that heavier rain is starting to roll in. The rotation on this storm is closer to the Waiteville area and moving up toward Crimson Spring. I'm going to zoom back out here and show you the motion of this storm. It's moving to the north and east at 40 miles an hour. We've been tracking this since the warning popped, and it looks like if this storm holds its course, could be in Lewisburg in about 20 minutes, Ronceverte in about 15. We'll have to see if we keep that tight rotation as it moves north. So what we're looking at here, for anybody who just tuned in, we do have an active tornado warning for Monroe County, West Virginia. We've been tracking the storm as it moved through Giles County. This is where the rotation is on this cell. It's currently near the Waiteville area, and there it is. You saw that tornado warning get cut back from the National Weather Service. Not a surprise there. Still in effect till 1:45 p.m. We're just going to watch this and stick with it as it moves on through. It is moving off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour, so that puts it in the Lewisburg area in roughly 15 minutes. Ronceverte in 15 minutes, rather. Lewisburg in roughly 20 minutes. So we'll stick with you until we watch this storm either fall apart or things start to move out of our region. I do think that it's possible with such tight rotation like that a brief spin up could have occurred with this cell. That's what we are watching. A lot of this is radar indicated. Talking to the National Weather Service, still haven't heard of any reports of an actual tornado on the ground. Moving toward Crimson Springs, moving towards Gap Mills, West Virginia in Monroe County. Great way to visualize this for anybody who may just be tuning in is with the storm wind. So what we've got going on is a lot of green and red. If you picture where that cell is located, stretching from roughly Union all the way down to the West Virginia border, this is where we see that rotation. We've got some more impressive wind in the green, so that's actually wind moving toward the radar. And we see the red moving away from the radar. This is where the tight rotation was. Seems to have broadened just a little bit, but I imagine that we will likely keep this tornado warning around until 1:45. That's when it's set to expire. Since it has moved into the terrain, it's starting to fall apart just a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you can let your guard down. Seek shelter if you're underneath this warning. We'll be watching this and tracking it. I am going to restart that lap so you can see the motion of this storm. I think that's a good way to explain how it's been moving over the last hour, and that helps to, show where it's going too. And the best thing that we can do here is just, if you are underneath that warning, make sure you seek shelter. A room without windows, a basement, anything like that. Just make sure that you seek shelter and you're ready to go. We did watch the warning get cut back a little bit. Storm not looking quite as impressive as it was. We'll be keeping our eye on this though. Here is our new warning, still for just Monroe County. It does include Union and most of the US 219 corridor closer to Ronceverte. It'll keep drifting to the north, and once it gets into Greenbrier County, it's possible that with that tight rotation, we may see another warning get issued. And if that happens, of course, we will stick with you. We'll be watching this closely. This is where we see the rotation right now. It's in southeastern Monroe County, just outside Waiteville, moving toward Gap Mills. The motion of this entire system is off to the north and east, and you can see how this cell just popped up in Giles County, Virginia, and pretty impressive hook echo on it right there. That's what we look for on these cells, to see that tornado, and it's all moving up toward the north and east right now. If you have damage reports, make sure first off that you're safe. Secondly, we will be able to talk about that after, but we haven't heard of anything just yet, which of course is always good news, but this is an ongoing warning, so it's going to be a little bit of time before some of those start to roll in. Give me 1 second, just got to take a quick sip of water here. So, for anybody who's just tuning in, we've got an active tornado warning right now in Monroe County, West Virginia. The latest on our storm wind, not quite as impressive of rotation. This is the key area that we've been watching. Right now, it's right around Waiteville, and that's going to include parts of West Virginia toward the Gap Mills area, closer to Gates and Laurel Branch. I think that if there's still rotation associated with this cell, that's where it's going to be. We've been watching this system. It's moving off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour. If you're underneath this warning, seek shelter. Basement's the best place you can be. Otherwise, an interior room with no windows, bathrooms, closets, things like that. I've circled the region where we were watching that tight rotation, but you'll notice that we are not looking quite as tight as it was before. The rotation is not there as it was when this cell popped up, but that doesn't mean you can let your guard down. Some of the wind gusts associated with this cell are closer to 60 miles an hour too. So even if we start to lose that rotation, this is still a pretty impressive storm, and possible that there will be some hail associated with this. So keep an eye out for some hail. We are still seeing some heavy rain through parts of Monroe County. I do think that we will likely keep a lot of the rain around, even if this storm starts to break up a little bit. If this one cell in particular breaks up, we are going to be dealing with more rain. But for now, what we're focused on is the fact that this is an active tornado warning. We, again, tracked this all the way through Giles County, Virginia. It had some impressive rotation with it before. We are not seeing quite as much rotation now off to the north. Union still included underneath this warning, but not quite as impressive as it was when it started to form. And just to switch back over to our reflectivity here, this is where we are watching. It's the southern edge of this cell. This is where we saw the rotation. The National Weather Service still has this in effect until 1:45, and this again is radar indicated. We have not gotten a report of a tornado on the ground, but the rotation associated with this storm is capable of potentially producing a tornado. So we're watching this very closely, still moving off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour, and we are just gonna have to watch. We can actually track where a lot of that where a lot of that rotation was. Where you see the reds here is where we really picked up on that rotation, and you'll notice it went straight through Giles County, Virginia into Monroe County, West Virginia, and this is where we are still picking up on some of that rotation in the wind. So what we need to watch for here is to see if that rotation is going to continue to weaken or if we are going to see it try to re-strengthen. I think that with some of the energy that we used up from the rain this morning, it's possible that this will continue to break apart now that it is moving in, but I still think that you need to just seek shelter if you're underneath this warning. Very important to do so. I'm going to zoom back out here and we can loop the radar. Anybody who's just tuning in, what we're talking about here is an active tornado warning that popped up for Monroe County, West Virginia. We've been watching this cell as it moved in through Giles County, Virginia. It was a pretty impressive cell in Virginia, but now that it is running into the terrain, the mountains, trying to break it apart, but we've still got an active warning in effect. We've still got that rotation associated with this cell right here. You can see it just pop right up, and now that it's moving in, it's not nearly as organized as it was, but we've still got some rotation on the southern end of this cell, and that's all near the Waitsville area, near Gap Mills. Union is included in that warning. Again, if you are in the warning box, make sure that you are seeking shelter. That's very important to do. Best places to do it, basement or in an interior room like a bathroom or a closet with no windows. You do not want to be near windows when a storm like this pops up. So we'll just track this as it moves off to the north. The leading edge of this is moving out of Monroe County now and closer to the Ronceverte area, straight up US 219. Now the leading edge of this, we do see some gusty conditions and some heavier rain, possibly even a little bit of hail, but the rotation that we saw associated with that tornado warning is on the southern side of this. And that's where we are just going to have to watch. Again, more scans of the radar means more data coming in and we can get an up-to-date view on what's going on. This was a radar indicated tornado, so nobody called in and said, hey, there's a tornado on the ground. What we are picking up on is that rotation that the radar is able to actually visualize and see. So that helps us when we are a little, further away. Still seeing some impressive wind gusts out of this, though. I think that a lot of us will probably see 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts. It's a little bit further away from the radar site. Some of these numbers are underdone a little bit. We'll be watching very closely. Seek shelter in Monroe County. Do you see these numbers? 41 miles an hour, 44 miles an hour. It's a little further from the radar site now, so it's likely a little bit gustier than what we can actually visualize with radar data. Wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour possible with this. Plus, we also see the chance for hail up to about 0.75 inches in diameter within the warned area. This entire system is moving off to the north and east. This one cell is moving off to the north and east at about 40 miles an hour, so that will soon put it into Greenbrier County. I do think that it is starting to lose some of that rotation, but until we see that rotation go away, we will be underneath that active tornado warning. It is set to expire at 1:45, so we'll just track it as it starts to move on through. Right now, the rotation that we see is outside of the Waitsville area, closer to Gap Mills. Union in Monroe County is included underneath this warning. If we zoom back out, you can see the warning pretty clearly here. It's just shy of Alderson and it rides along the Greenbrier-Monroe County border. Pickaway is included within this warning as well. And this is an active tornado warning that we have going on right now. Here is our cell starting to fall apart a little bit. We need to keep an eye on some redevelopment on this secondary cell below it too. I think that if this cell right here was to form a bit more rotation, it would mostly be on the southern side of it, but we are watching very closely just in case. But National Weather Service Blacksburg still has that warning going until 1:45, and they actually just expired that tornado warning for Monroe County. And that should update here on our map any minute. The National Weather Service chat just posted from Blacksburg that the tornado warning has expired. The storm itself starting to fall apart a bit, not seeing as much of that rotation. So as we get a little bit later into the afternoon here, it's possible that we actually could see a couple more strong rotating storms try to fire up, especially in our southern and eastern counties. That's where we see the best chance for some stronger thunderstorms and some more storms possible to even produce those tornadoes as we get a little bit later into the day. So we'll be watching this very closely. Thanks everybody who stuck with us. We are going to be keeping our eye on anything else that may pop up here as we get later into the day. So stick with Storm Tracker 59 for more updates. You can always get updates right here on air. You can get them on our website, wvnstv.com, and we will be keeping our social media up to date as